Nella dindo, jella boom.
Boom, yeah. I understand boom.
Bada boom.
Big. Big bada boom.
Big. Bada big boom. Big.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, big bada boom.
Bada boom.
Big boom. Big bada boom. You know, you're lucky you're not dead.
This is a police control. Please keep your hands on the wheel. You have an unauthorized passenger.
Hey, Adrenalheads, I'm Mark.
And I'm Lara.
And this week we're going to be covering The Fifth Element from 1997. And if you people don't know Lara's voice, well, she's been a co-host on Panels to Pixels podcast on the Next Level Podcast Network with me. And we covered The Crow. And with that review, as well as her feedback in The Witcher, which was amazing too, because I rely on my friends who have really good opinions and thoughts, and this movie was her pick, and she loves this movie just as much as I do.
I do.
Yes, you do. Lara, so why don't you kick us off with our the synopsis of The Fifth Element?
Sure. In the 23rd century, a New York City cabbie, Corbin Dallas, played by Bruce Willis, finds the fate of the world in his hands when Lilu, Mila Jovovich, falls into his cab. As the embodiment of the fifth element, Lilu needs to combine with the other four to keep the approaching great evil from destroying the world. Together with Father Vito Cornelius, Ian Holm, and the zany broadcaster Ruby Rod, Chris Tucker, Dallas must race against time and the wicked industrialist Zorg, Gary Oldman, to save humanity.
Yeah. An amazing movie nonetheless, and something that I always quote every time I can, because with everything with the going on with the vaccine cards, I go, Little Dallas Multipass. You know, that's not something you really should be doing. But the funny thing is I've always loved this movie since I saw it in the theater way back in 1997. And it was something that I really enjoyed nonetheless. And I still go back to it and watch it every once in a while. And Lara, explain to us, why did you bring this movie up and why did you want to cover it?
Yeah. My husband and I went and saw it in the theaters when it first came out. And we were both big fans of Luc Besson, the director, who directed La Femme Nikita, the original French version, not the crappy version with Bridget Fonda, and The Messenger, which also has Mila Jovovich in it. He has a penchant for these strong, beautiful female action heroes. And in that time period, there weren't so many characters like that, not as prominent as they are today. So I was really attracted to Lilo as the antagonist, as well as the bright, colorful, over-the-top direction and cinematography. And plus, I've been in love with Gary Oldman since he did Sid and Nancy, and I was a teenager. So I try and watch anything that he's in.
Yeah, I love, same here. I do love him. He is such a great actor. And the one thing that struck me most about this movie was it was a strong female character in it. And it was done very well, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And what were your initial thoughts or your overall thoughts about the movie? Or were those your thoughts?
I just recall really loving it the first few times I'd seen it and everything. And I actually hadn't seen it in a while. And I'm rewatching it. It is a little bit dated with some of the special effects and
yeah, it is.
And the Muppet-like aliens, but I kind of love that. I think it's nostalgic and fun.
Actually, those Muppet-like aliens were actually very well done for practical effects. If you think about it, during this time, they were pretty much almost like Jim Henson-like, as you stated.
Yes.
But the thing is that it worked for its time. And it still does, too, as I watched it recently again, and I was, like, so enamored with it. I'm like, wow, I really love that, because it showed a realism to it. Don't get me wrong, I love CGI. They've done a lot with Godzilla and a lot of like the Jurassic Park movies and everything over the years. But the thing is, sometimes you really do need that practical effect in a movie, and I really enjoyed that within it. Yeah. And it still holds true. That's really what I loved about it.
And if you watch a lot of Luc Besson movies, they're very kind of dark and gritty, especially like La Femme Nikita and The Professional. But this was so over the top and funny and crazy. I just thought it was a fun departure for his style.
Exactly. But if you think about it, he got Gary Oldman to do Leon for The Professional too. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So
and he was great in that movie too.
Oh yeah, he was in. Oh god,
probably one of the best villains I think.
Yeah, it was definitely done very well for that particular movie. So if you listeners are out there, listen, go watch that movie. It's really good. With me, well, I just love this movie since I saw it in the theater back in 1997. It was just another date night movie for me and my girlfriend back then, but I walked in because all the trailers were great for it at that time. So I just love to go see something like that because it just captivated me with the visuals, just like Lara did. It was also the same year for another movie that I love as well, which would have been Starship Troopers. And I'm forgetting the director of that. He also did RoboCop. I just love The Fifth Element for the humor, action, and fantasy about it. Plus the love story we get within it, which is kind of offsetting, but it's really good nonetheless because, Corbin does fall in love with Lilo, or Lilu. Yeah, I'm saying it. Lilu, yeah. And then she falls in love with him. So the story was a bit crazy, but that's what makes movies work at that point. And it gives you a sense of a good feeling at the very end, too. Mm-hmm. Because certain movies nowadays give you that feeling of dread at the very end, and they do basically continue it on with a sequel. So with this one, I don't think there should be a sequel. And I don't think it ever should have a sequel. How do you feel about that, Lara?
No, I don't think so. I think it ended well, and I don't know, maybe a spin-off with Ruby Rod or something like that.
Our friend Jerry, who we know from our group, hates Ruby Rod. Chris Tucker was great at it, but he was so annoying, and I do agree with Jerry with that. It's like, even in the theater, when I first saw it, was like, all the screaming, and it was like, it really got to me. But over the years, as I watched the movie over and over again, I grew appreciation for it. But the thing is, Chris Tucker was over the top, as he always was. And that's what I really appreciated about Chris Tucker. But, yeah, the first viewing was like, oh my god, that guy is so annoying. That guy, it's so annoying. But over the years, I've developed that appreciation. So, but
he's like a prince on speed, and you have to slow your VCR down to half speed to understand what he's saying half the time.
Oh, forget it. He's like on fast forward the whole time. And you kids that don't know that, and with VHS and everything, it's like you have VHS. It's like he just goes that way. But it's pretty funny nonetheless. So with that, we're going to move on to our favorite scenes in the movie. So Lara, tell us what your first favorite scene was.
First one is Lilo's initial regeneration in the alien, from the alien gauntlet. I'm thinking that was like a hand or a gauntlet that they regenerated her from. I can never tell for sure.
Like a coffin.
It had something in it. I don't even know what it was, but I don't know. Anyhow,
it's kind of strange.
They got it from the alien ship, and they're regenerating it. So it kind of looks like they put her in this MRI type machine, and everyone is expecting this big Herculean stud to appear from the regeneration machine, and it's supposed to be the supreme being. So she emerges, and it's this tiny, petite, beautiful woman. And General Monroe, his reaction was so creepy. He's like, "Oh, I have to take pictures for records." I'm like, skin crawling. But she easily smashes her way through the unbreakable glass, quote unquote unbreakable glass and knocks him out and escapes the scientists and the police to free dive into Dallas's cab.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, women are the supreme being because they're able to give life, create life, and live longer than men. So that's just my thoughts. But but that one scene itself, the fact that they actually use the bandages as her costume at that point, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Within that scene itself. I really enjoyed that.
They were all discreetly placed on her body.
Exactly. But then she wound up changing.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. But we get a scene later on in the movie that Corbin and Cornelius has to suffer through where she's like, I gotta change.
We get lots of scenes of Lilu changing clothes in front of everyone.
Yeah, she has no
shame.
She's not embarrassed. Yeah, exactly.
Not shy.
She's not embarrassed at all about it. She's like, it's me. Yeah, but I did enjoy that. That was pretty cool. My first one would be the mugger scene at Corbin Dallas's apartment. Yeah, the guy has a hat that looks like the hallway when Corbin opens the door.
That was ingenious.
It was, but he was definitely somebody who was drugged out. But Corbin tells him it's not loaded and that he has to push the yellow button to load it. And then Corbin's like, well, I'll push that for you. Okay. And then he pushes the button for him. But that was the safety. And then he takes the gun away, tosses it away, grabs another gun from him, and then he points it at him and then tells him to leave. And then he goes, oh, nice hat. And the tweaker just starts dancing and wanders away. It's so comedic and so purposely put in there, and I just loved it for that. The humor within the movie itself is what really captivated me more than anything within the movie itself.
Yeah.
The story is a main structure, yes, that I love, but the humor is really what really sold me on this movie.
Yeah. The story is pretty basic for your average plot, but I think it's all the comedy and the just fun of the movie that makes it great. Well, my next favorite scene was just a small one, but Dallas talking with the Chinese restaurant owner about his down and out life. I actually thought that he was sitting at a restaurant or like an outdoor food market. And then the cook's ship pulls away from the window and you see that he's actually flying around from house to house serving people. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we get one of these now? I want someone to drive up to my front window and serve me food and drive away.
Yeah, it's called DoorDash.
No, but he absolutely has a conversation with the guy. I thought it was great.
Oh, yeah, nowadays, no, not so much. But I'm sure later on with hopefully everything going away, we actually have that. But yeah, it's pretty much DoorDash. It's like, here's your food. Ha, ha, ha. Here you go. But, was it Chinese food?
Well, it was a Chinese...
server.
I mean, the guy serving was Chinese. I just assumed. It could have been Italian.
Yeah, it could have been McDonald's. Who knows?
That was one funny thing. It's supposed to be, 300 some years in the future, and there's still McDonald's, and there's still Yellow Pages.
Yes.
300 years in the future.
Go figure, right? All right. Well, next up for me would be when his Corbin's old superior shows up at his apartment and tells him that the Floss in Paradise tickets were a way to get him on the mission. He sees Lilu and, was it Cornelius in the viewer and scrambles to hide everybody, his old superior, and then puts them all in the freezer. And then the cops show up. Then he has to scramble to hide Lilu and Cornelius. So Lilu goes in the washer that goes up. And then Cornelius is stuck in the bed that gets vacuumed up and pushed in. And at the very end, it's like he winds up taking the mission from his boss because Cornelius knocks him over the head with his old award and takes his Floss in Paradise tickets. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a great romp within one particular scene. The fact that you do see the guy, they're all frozen there. And I'm doing something that looks like Frozen. They're frozen there. And then, of course, with Lilo, she's like freezing and he's trying to dry her off at the very end. But then Cornelius knocks him over the head. I thought that was perfect. That was great comedic talent, great storytelling, and how to avoid something. And it was perfect within that scene itself.
And when I rewatched it, I thought, oh, that's kind of dark. His superiors and all the other soldiers with him froze to death, but you see them later. They're all fine.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Let's see. I also liked the weapons sale scene with Zorg and the Mangalores. Peak Gary Oldman. I just love his fast talking Southern accent. He sounds kind of like a used car dealer.
Yeah, he does.
He is just wonderful in that scene. He's an utter chameleon.
Yeah, Gary Oldman seems to manipulate himself to any character that he can, and he is such an amazing talent. I just love him for who he is and what he does. Who could be Sid Vicious and then go to be Beethoven in another movie, of all things, Yeah. And
my favorite character of his is Drexel, the Rastafarian pimp in True Romance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or Romeo is Bleeding, or Dracula. Yeah, and Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. To me, those were great films, and I just love them. He is such an underrated actor and should be acclaimed. I'm not sure if he has an Academy Award, but if he doesn't, he needs one. That's my thought.
Yeah, I think he does, but
I'm sure he does.
IMDb that later.
We have to go to that route later. I'm sure you listeners will probably attack me, but it's fine. Correct me. I always implore everybody to correct me. So, next up for me would be Zorg showing off the ZF-1 gun to the warriors. So there were so many cool weapons within just one gun at that point. The auto replay that takes all the bullets to the same shot. So he starts shooting all those guys and it just goes back to the same shot that he first started at. And then the rocket launcher, the net, and then, of course, the famous flamethrower, his favorite. And then, at the very end, the Mangalores didn't really provide what he needed. So he was going to give him 4 crates of these guns, but he needed 4 stones. He goes, "This case is empty." And he just looks at it, this case. 4 stones, 4 crates. You give me no crates. No stones, no crates for you, or something like that. And then he gave him 1 crate out of just the effort itself. At least he gave him something. But the thing is, it's like, it's going to come back later, which it does. But it's so funny. I just enjoyed that. Just the scene itself of him showing off the gun and what it can do is amazing.
And of course, he had an option B, which was the blinking red light on the bottom of the gun.
Of course.
He's like, anyone smart enough would have asked what this is about. Click, boom. Also, another scene that I love is the introduction of Ruby Rod as the ship is taking off. He's got his 100-mile-a-minute dialogue that he's talking to Dallas with. That you have to I had to turn on the closed captioning to even understand what he was saying. And as the crew, that whole cut back and forth as the cruise ship is about to take off to Flowers in Paradise, and we get the scenes of Ruby Rod and the flight attendant enacting their own launch sequence as the as the ship is about to take off as well.
Yeah.
It's so French.
Yeah, exactly right.
What do you expect from a French director?
All right. Well, next one for me would be Zorg talking to Cornelius about the stones. He gets a little cocky in explaining about life when Cornelius states he destroys life. So, meaning Zorg destroys life. And then he talks about the great chain of life with destruction, and that being Zorg himself. And then what happens? Zorg winds up choking on a cherry. And then, Cornelius has the upper hand and states that his power can all change based just on this one cherry alone. So basically, he could die within a moment and nobody would care. Then, out of the blue, Cornelius saves Zorg's life by a blow to the back, just like, somebody who's joking. And he goes, "Since you saved my life, I'll spare yours." And then he lets Cornelius go about his business. But that whole scene itself, because the humor within it, because you see everything, Zorg is grabbing for everything mechanical. Mm-hmm. And then you see the little creature come out trying to do something, and he can't do anything. The only person that could do anything was Cornelius. Uh-huh. So it was basically showing events of this is happening. If that person wasn't there, you wouldn't be here now. Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing.
He kind of proves Zorg's disdain for humanity as false, because without another human, he would have certainly died there.
Exactly. Yeah, humanity is very important.
Well, my favorite scene of the movie is the concert on Flausen Paradise mixed with the Lilo fight scene. I've always remembered that. Yeah.
yeah, that's mine as well. So we could talk about this randomly. So you go ahead.
Yeah. The music is just beautiful. I love that it was opera and then it morphs into this kind of club mix new wave style song. I loved the introduction of the diva. She's ginormous and blue and kind of looks like an H.R. Giger piece of art with the tubes and everything coming out of the back of her. And after that scene, it's the Corbin Dallas turns into John McClane scene, because Bruce Willis is doing what he does best and just starts shooting dudes and taking names.
Yeah, and honestly, I really enjoyed that because the way they were able to choreograph the music to the hits with Mila Jovovich. I'm trying to say it the right way. Not Jovovich, Jovovich. So she, the hits with the sudden strikes within the choreography of the music, it works perfectly. And I just love that whole scene. And the music itself, very, very much futuristic and very vocally creative, I thought, for its time. Now, if you listeners are really interested in something that's really cool, you could go see Jane Zhang. That's Xhang. She's a Chinese, I think, opera artist. And she recreated that with an orchestra and a band. And you can see it on YouTube. And it's awesome. She hits all the pitches and everything that woman did live.
That's crazy.
And you can see it live. So it's amazing. I really love music. Everybody out there who knows me, Larry knows this. We love music. And when I started looking at this, I'm like, oh. And then I go to YouTube and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This woman has a huge voice for such a tiny woman. She's got such a huge depth, and I really love it. And it's amazing, and you got to watch it. So Jane Zhang, if you could actually look it up. So check that out on YouTube, and check out that scene too, because they have clips of that on YouTube as well. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because, when you rent the movie on Prime, it gives you the X-ray and it gives you tidbits about the movie. I think it said something about the composer of that song wrote the music and then gave it to the singer who was going to perform the song. And she laughed and told him that some of those notes, the way they were juxtaposed with each other in the music, could not be hit with the human voice because it was too much of a range. And so
Wow.
the composer had to take clips of her hitting one note and then hitting the other note and then fuse them together because she said that it wasn't possible. But apparently I think it is, and I'd love to see that clip.
It is possible, and do check out Jane Zhang on YouTube. Cool. She has her own Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And you could just Jane, JaneXHang, and just put in Fifth Element and you'll find it. She does it live. It is impressive. Amazing. So check it out.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that was all of my scenes.
The only one that I have left would be the negotiation scene with the Mangalores. Corbin takes over just after he saves Ruby Rod to save Cornelius from them. So they have this whole scene just after that whole exposition with the opera, as it were, and the Mangalores come in and invade, and they're attacking the ship, and then he kind of saves Ruby where he shoots around him. Ruby drops down. They have to get away. They start running through. He takes out a bunch of Mangalores at the same time. And, he's down just a few, but then, he's trying to talk to the Mangalore. And then he finds out, oh, that's the leader. And then Mangalore Negotiator, who is the leader, he goes, send over whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then, Corbin does his thing and shoots out. And it's like, oh, there's 4 to the left now and 2 to the right. I'm like, okay. And then next thing you know, he shoots out. It's like, okay. Oh, that's the Mangalore Negotiator. That's the leader. So, and then he gets up. He goes, do you mind if I negotiate? And the, I think it was the ship's
the security
guy. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, go ahead. And then he shoots out the negotiator. He goes, and then negotiations are over. That's it. That was like, it was one of those weird things where it's just like, oh, okay.
Typical of action heroes in the 80s and 90s,
Pretty much.
All action, no talk. Little talk.
Well, it's Bruce Willis, so he was John McClane, and we did cover this on this podcast at one point. It's actually how we started off. All right, so with that, we're going to move into interesting facts or unknown facts about the movie, The Fifth Element. So, Lara, you want to start us off?
Sure. Director and writer Luc Besson said he started writing the screenplay when he was 16, creating the vivid fantasy universes to combat the boredom he experienced living in rural France. But it didn't reach the screen until he was 38 years old. By that time, he felt he was old enough to actually have something to say about life.
Interesting. Number 2, the filmmaker had approached Willis to star as a heroic cabbie Corbin Dallas back in the early 1990s, before he had financing in place. He also sought Mel Gibson, who turned the part down, which would have been interesting nonetheless, too, because I could see them both, because you got, Die Hard, and you got Lethal Weapon. Both pretty much cut from the same cloth.
Yes. I could see Mel in that role as well.
Same here.
But ultimately, Besson thought he'd have to settle for a cheaper leading man. But in a chance conversation with Willis, the actor said that if he liked the script, he'd find out a way to make the money work. Sometimes I just do things because they're fun, Willis said in one of his movie role choices in 1997. And this was a real fun movie to make. He'd end up signing up for a reduced salary up front and a percentage of the profits.
Interesting. Yeah, and he could have banked on it. He probably did. Number 4, Oldman, who played the villain in The Professional, or Leon the Professional, took the bad guy role of Zorg as a favor to Besson, who'd helped finance Oldman's directing debut, Nil by Mouth, or NIL by Mouth. It was me singing for my supper, Oldman recalled in 2011. I owed him one. He did his duty, but he didn't think much of his performance. I can't bear it, he said in 2014. Wow. There's been a lot of speculation. A lot of people have heard it before. Oldman doesn't really like this particular character that he played in a film. And honestly, it's one of the few characters that I loved about Oldman.
Yeah,
because he was way over the top.
I know.
It was so different and so comical. It wasn't true to somebody who was like maybe Sid Vicious or Ludwig van Beethoven, or being like the part of the mob in Leon the Professional, or Romeo and Romeo is Bleeding, or Commissioner Gordon in, Christopher Nolan's Batman series.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very different character, and he could form himself into these characters. I'm hoping that in time he changes his view, because I really like this character.
Yeah, I'm hoping he appreciates it in time, but we all appreciate it. So I think it's great. The filmmakers auditioned 8,000 actresses to play the mysterious, scantily clad heroine Lilu. Besson said he saw 200 or 300 of those actresses read. One of them was Jovovich, who had taken a break from acting after Dazed and Confused 3 years earlier in order to focus on her singing career. Mila had this physical thing, and this is a quote from Besson. Mila had this physical thing. She can be from the past or the future. He said in 1997, she can be an Egyptian or a Roman. She can be Nefertari, or she can be from outer space. I don't know about Nefertari, but okay, she's beautiful, and she fit the role perfectly.
Well, she was a model, so honestly, she had that distinguished looks. Mm-hmm. And you could tell that too, just because, honestly, recently on Panels of Pixels, we covered The Black Widow, and that had her daughter playing a young Natasha Romanoff.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. That sounds cool.
Oh, you gotta watch it. She plays her daughter actually plays a young Natasha Romanoff. Looks just like her. Cool. And her daughter actually did something on Twitter and Facebook and posed as Lilo Dallas Multipass. And you could see it too. And you could see the likeness right there with her. So yeah, it's a cute thing, but Mila is a very beautiful, attractive woman. I noticed her first in Dazed and Confused, and that's dating myself because that movie was how long ago? But it's one of my favorite movies, and I remembered her because she was just a brunette, but also she was a model at that time. Mm-hmm. Very unknown to the public eye. So that was her casting role at that point.
I knew her from her modeling because, we grew up in the same generation. And when I was a teenager, 17 magazine was very popular. And
I know.
I saw her in 17 magazine quite a few times.
Yeah, to me, it was just literally the filmmaking. Because after Dazed and Confused, I saw her in The Fifth Element. And after that, obviously, Resident Evil. Mm-hmm. And I knew right away who she was. Obviously, Zoolander too.
Yes.
We've seen her in Zoolander too. Because the funny thing is that she plays a model as well within that particular movie, which is kind of poking at that whole thing.
Yeah.
In her career, but it's pretty cool. But she has proven herself over the years. She's become a consummate actress or actor.
And I think she really does do the martial arts, doesn't she? Like I think I saw her recently, like doing some sword work or something, just practicing.
Yeah. She did a movie not too long ago. I'm forgetting it was based upon a video game, and Daphne will probably kill me for not knowing or remembering the movie.
Is it Ultraviolet?
No. It was the Monsters movie that just came out. It was based on a
Kill
video
All
game.
Monsters?
Nope. It's not. I'm not gonna go into it because we're doing this live and we're recording it live and we're not overdubbing everybody. So we're going, and my memory sucks, as we all know. So I'm just gonna state there was a monster movie based upon a video game. She was in it, and so was Ron Perlman, and so was a bunch of other people. And she did so well in that as well. And honestly, she is an action hero, in my opinion. You know, she does so well for the women that are out there, and she keeps herself fit. She has a family. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, her husband is a director and a producer, but and puts her in a lot of films. But she does these things, and she keeps active, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. So, kudos to Mila. All right. Well, after we digress so much, number 6. Fifth Element would relaunch the future Resident Evil mainstay as an action star, a career for which she began training over several months of rehearsals for Lilu, studying acting and karate for 8 hours a day, so which leads into what you were stating before, Lara. Yeah. So it was pretty much her starting point.
And even so, the martial arts novice couldn't manage some of the high kicks required for her character. They were accomplished via artful editing and an artificial leg operated from just outside the frame.
And number 8, French fashionista Jean-Paul Gaultier designed the film's elaborate gender-bending costumes. He had to outfit at least 900 actors and extras. One costume included a jacket that was said to have cost $5,000. Oh my goodness. That's where the budget went? $5,000 for a damn jacket?
It's probably a bargain for a Gaultier jacket.
I guess so. I don't know. Give me a $30 jacket, I'm happy.
Chris Tucker, still best known at the time for his Scene-Stealing Friday role, won the role of colorful media personality Ruby Rod because the part had been turned down by Besson's first choice, Prince.
Prince? We could have had Prince? Damn! I love Chris Tucker, don't get me wrong, but Prince?
I would not object to Prince in that role.
I would not object to him as well. What the hell? Like, listeners, you guys know this. I do not read these ahead of time. I just copy-pasted. I did not read this. Oh my goodness. And this is from a valued source too, as well. So, okay. Wow, Prince. That would have been amazing. Oh, Prince, why didn't you do that? Please. Well, number 10. So why did Prince turn down the role? Okay, that's a good question. As Gaultier explained in 2013, the Purple Rain star found the proposed costumes the designer had shown him in illustrations to be a bit effeminate. Let that sink in for a minute. Wow. Okay, number 11?
Gaultier also unwittingly offended Prince with his description of the proposed outfit. A mesh suit that was padded, with a padded fringe-bedecked rear. Gaultier kept referring to this part of the suit as the faux cul, which in French means fake ass. But because of his thick accent, he said Prince misheard him saying, "Fuck you." Fuck you.
Wow. Fuck you. Wow. But Prince actually did an assless pants thing in a video.
You know, he wants to feature his own ass, not a fake ass.
Well, that's true. Yeah, he was a short man. Shorter than me, too. And I'm a short guy. I'm like maybe 5'6". He was a short dude. And he always wore lifts. But he loved his ass. And he did it in a video. But, you know, Prince has his standards and what he wants to do. And I guess he misinterpreted fake ass as fuck you. But I'm sorry, Prince. We love you. We love your work. Thank you.
R.I.P. Prince.
Oh, yeah, exactly. All right, number 12. Tucker has said he took inspiration from both Prince and Michael Jackson in crafting his performance as Ruby Rod, quipped Gaultier. Maybe he's less Michael Jackson and more Janet. Oh my god. Quote unquote. Oh my goodness. The things I learn.
See what happens when you don't read ahead?
Yeah, well, it has to be a surprise. Trust me.
Besson enlisted influential French comic books artists Jean Giraud, aka Mobius, and Jean-Claude Mézières to design his futuristic universe. Willis's flying taxi was inspired by the images of a similar vehicle in Mézières' title, The Circles of Power. And I actually used to buy some Mobius comics back in the day.
Yes, you did. Number 14, the New York scenes were created using a combination of CGI for the flying cars, live action, the people, and scale models, the buildings. A crew of 80 on the production design team spent 5 months building dozens of city blocks at 1/24th scale. That's pretty small.
Pre-CGI.
Yeah.
The language Lilu speaks had a vocabulary of 400 words invented by Besson and Jovovich. They practiced it by writing letters to each other in the made-up language.
Pretty cool. Number 16, Besson cast his wife Mayon Lebesco as the alien diva Plava Laguna above after the actress he'd originally chosen dropped out. But during the shoot, he left Mauen and took up with Jovovich.
Scandalous.
Scandalous. Yes, so there was a lot of people that were in for that role.
So French.
Oh, yes.
Besson and Jovovich married at the end of 1997 and divorced 2 years later after he directed her in the lead role of the 1999 movie The Messenger, The Story of Joan of Arc, which I saw, and it was good, but not really what I expected.
Same here. Yeah, I felt the same way. But I'm not saying that she didn't do a good job. But you know,
oh, no, she was great.
She was great in it, but the movie fell short, in my opinion.
The story had a twist in it that I didn't expect.
A lot of people didn't expect that either. But, you know, could always go back to the history books and, you know, read what was really happening at that point. Number 18, the astonishment on everyone's face when Plavlaguna appears was real. Besson had isolated his wife from the cast so that no one would know that what the diva was supposed to look like until they saw her in character as the blue-skinned alien. Wow. So basically, he just hid her away. So, here, this is it. This is my wife. But she did a great job, in my opinion. Visually, it looked great.
That would have been a dramatic entrance. Like, she's like 9 feet tall or something. She's like huge.
Yeah, I think they make it look like that she is 9 feet tall, but with all the stuff that was going on around her, with all the tentacles and everything else that was jutting out of her, it's very imposing, so I guess you got the shock value out of it, but the scene did well, in my opinion. Yeah, I still love the look of it, so it works out.
Yeah. Surprisingly, hero Willis and villain Oldman share no screen time.
Yep. That is true. They do not. Gary Oldman and Bruce Willis never shared any time together within one scene. Well, number 20, The Fifth Element cost a reported $90 million to produce, the costliest film made up to that point, by a non-American production company. In this case, the French studio Gaumont. It earned back $264 million worldwide, $200 million of which came from moviegoers outside North America. It held the record as the most globally successful French-produced movie until The Untouchables in 2011.
And the movie earned 1 Oscar nomination for Best Sound Editing.
Interesting. Yeah, well, the sounds were really good in that movie, I think.
Yeah,
And being
especially
a person,
the opera scene.
Yeah. The person, me being somebody who worked in recording studios and having to deal with sound all the time and how people are recorded, I really do appreciate it because there was a lot going on within it. And especially with the syncopation within that scene itself. I really do admire it. All right. So now we're going to move right along and go into quotes. So, Lara, what do you have for your first quote?
My first quote comes when the police are in search of Dallas, and the police officer says, "Sir, are you classified as a human?" And Dallas's response is, "Negative. I am a meat popsicle." I'm like, what? Meat popsicle?
Yeah, that's after the police had raided, just after he was accosted and all that, and with Cornelius and his former commander at that point. And he goes, "Bet I did, dude."
Also, the scene you were talking about where Fogg, the security guard, says, "We're sending someone in to negotiate." And Dallas, after shooting the head Mangalore squarely in the head, answers, "Anyone else want to negotiate?"
Yeah, very good. Anybody else want to negotiate?
That's his negotiating skills.
His tactics, yep.
You
want to continue on? Yeah, continue on with yours. That'd be cool.
My last favorite quote was Dallas said when after meeting Lilo in Father Cornelius's apartment, he says, "She said something I didn't understand." Well, I didn't understand anything of what she said, but what does ectogamut mean? And Father Cornelius replies, "Never without my permission," referring to Dallas trying to kill Lilo while she's sleeping, which she swiftly responds with a gun to his head. So, guys, ectogamut.
Ectogamut. No. Ectogamut. Actually is how she says it, though.
Perfect.
Perfect, right?
Never without my permission.
Never without my permission. Yep. Yeah, every woman should be saying that. Never without my permission. Hold on. What do I got? Let me cut this. All right. First one for me would be, well, this is classic, and I use it every day at work when I'm stuck in a hole and I have to run wires through a crawl space. Aziz light. So, and I just love the fact that, we got that scene. You got the archaeologist there, and of course, from 90210 himself,
Luke Perry
himself.
It was so sad to see him.
Yeah, it was sad, but to me, I enjoyed it because it was just such a humorous role, and I just love it.
It was a short cameo, and he was so young.
He was so young at the time. Actually, he was doing 90210 at the time, still, when he did this. And it's like, the aliens come walking in, and the lights come in from the ship, and he goes, and you see all the lights come in, and it blares up, and then the archaeologist goes, "Thank you, Aziz." It's like, what the? But I always say it, Aziz light. It's something that you could always use, and any reference, like if you're in a club and people can't see what you got to read, and you're like, Aziz light. Somebody will say that. It's like one of those go-to terms or quotes that you have to use that your friends will always know. The next one up would be Corbin Dallas saying, "Hey lady, I only speak 2 languages, English and bad English." And that was after he got his last strike on his license, after Lilu had crashed into the taxi.
Yes. And she's speaking in the supreme language or the divine language and has no idea what she's saying.
Yeah. Next up would be the flight attendant. Mr. Rod, you are going to have to assume your individual position. And Ruby goes, I don't want one position. I want all the positions. The perverted as he is, as androgynous as he was. Apparently he loves the ladies.
I'm trying to imagine Prince saying that line.
I could see Prince saying that. I really can. And I would love to have seen him as Ruby Rod, trust me. He would have been perfect. It would have been the perfect crossover. Not have been Purple Rain, but come on. It would have been perfect to show a little humor into himself itself.
Yes.
Because, he's got like a ton of music in his vault that Kevin Smith talks about over and over again. And I suggest all you guys and you listeners out there to actually go check out Kevin Smith's stuff, because he talks about doing a documentary about Prince, and it's amazing. Not to digress. But the last one for me, well, that would be Lilu saying, everything you create, you destroy. You used to destroy. And then Corbin goes, yeah, we call it human nature. And it's the truth.
But it's love that brings her to life. And that's why it's a love story.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our coverage overall of The Fifth Element from 1997. So with that, we move right along onto our guilty pleasure movie. So that could be any movie that you are a fan of or you love just to watch, but not everybody else in this world is a fan of, or IMDb gave it a bad rating or review. Rotten Tomatoes scored it terribly, or you bring it up amongst a bunch of friends and you go, that movie sucked, but you love it nonetheless. So what's your guilty pleasure movie, Lara?
Well, I thought of this one just because a remake is coming up, and I think the first go around at this movie was so divisive as far as people loving or hating it, including the director. I'll say David Lynch's 1984 version of Dune. I love that movie from the first time I watched it. I've seen it many, many times. It stars Kyle MacLachlan and Sting. It's a pretty long movie, but even so, I watched the extended version. I think it came out on PBS like when I was a teenager in the 80s, and they did the whole extended version where they talked about the whole history leading up to Dune in artboard form. And I watched that. I love the soundtrack by Toto. I've listened to that many, many times.
Yeah, I do agree with you. That's a great movie. I love the original Dune from 1984.
Yeah, it's kind of a love it or hate it kind of movie.
It is. It's pretty much almost like Blade Runner. It's either you're a fan or you're not. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people aren't. But Dune has been done at least 2 more times before. And it's going to be done again, too, as we both know.
I know there was a miniseries. I think in the 90s, and I did see that, and I can't even remember it because it was so unmemorable.
It was terrible. Yeah, it was unmemorable, and they did it again on Sci-Fi recently within the past 10 years. And then now they're redoing it again. So I know a lot of people who are Dune purists that are out there just love this movie or the books themselves and want it to be portrayed properly. Honestly, the Dune movie that we got with Kyle MacLachlan, Sting, everybody else that was in it. Alicia Witt was in it too.
Patrick Stewart?
Young. Yeah, Patrick Stewart as well. So you have a huge cast of people that were amazing in it. So Alicia Witt, who I've got to meet a few times, and we talked about it when I saw her at Walker Stalkers and conventions, and of all things, Christmas conventions. Because she does those, because she does the Hallmark holiday movies. Mm-hmm. But she was in that, and amongst all those people, it was very well done for its time in 1984. a lot was cut out based upon the original story of the book, and I do agree with that. But if they do this right with this new iteration and do it over a course of time to get the whole story out properly, I think it'll be done well. But I still have to go back to the original 1984 Dune.
Yeah,
I do agree.
I tried to read the book when I was a teenager, and I couldn't get through it. It was pretty heavy. So maybe if I went back now, I could get through it. But as much as I'm certain I will like this remake, it's not going to have the Toto soundtrack. So
no, but you could always play that as you're reading.
Yes, that's true.
You could always play it along in the background, and
Yeah. And my other guilty pleasure is Twilight. So take that, Ben.
Oh no! Oh no! You caused war.
We're ending the podcast now.
You burned my podcast. Yeah, sorry. No, actually, I can't say I haven't watched the Twilight series. It was interesting, not my cup of tea. But if you enjoy it, that's your thing, dude. That's your thing.
It was mostly the first movie, and mostly I liked it because it was something for me and my teenage daughter at the time to bond over. She loved it. I watched it.
Exactly.
I enjoyed it. We had fun sharing it together.
Yeah, and it had Anna Kendrick in it too.
And
right, Ben?
And Kristen Serranos, who is now on The Walking Dead.
There you go. All right, we'll move away from that now, so that way Ben doesn't attack me later. I'll go with mine, which would be Starship Troopers from 1997, the same year that this movie had come out, The Fifth Element had come out. So it was like a staple for me and my girlfriend to go to see a movie every weekend, because we just love movies and we love sci-fi, we loved horror, we loved all that cool stuff. So, I spoke to people recently, and a lot of people don't remember it too well. And some just don't like it. But I love it. And Verhoeven did a great job with this. You know, he started off with RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
Then he did Starship Troopers. So, or Total Recall before that. But honestly, you know, to me, I just loved it. The whole idea of the systematic with the army, recruitment, the whole thing. And it worked just like with RoboCop. And it worked for me. And I kind of got enamored with the characters, and I love the characters. And I just love the visual effects, because at the time, they were, you know, you had Michael Ironside in it. You had Casper Van Dien. Who else was in it? There was like a whole bunch of people in it.
I only saw it one time, but I remember really liking it. And for the same reasons that I liked The Fifth Element. It was just a fun, crazy sci-fi movie.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my whole feeling about it. So that's my go-to is Starship Troopers from 1997. So if you guys love it, go back to it and watch it again, because I plan on to. But I always do every once in a while, because it's one of those movies you can put on in the background. You can quote it verbatim for fun. But, you know, to me, that's mine.
Nice.
For this particular episode. So with that, we're going to just move right along into where can listeners hear you, or do you have any podcast recommendations?
Well, I've been on with you a few times. We've done The Crow and Wonder Woman 1984. And
yep.
It sent in a lot of feedback for The Witcher, and I'm looking forward to watching The Witcher when it comes on in December.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as podcasting on my own, no plans for it right now, but maybe in the future.
Well, you could always guest on maybe Wilhelm, House Podcastica, or whoever out there of our friends will bring you back. Mm-hmm. I would love to have you come back for another movie if you can for here, or even have you on for The Witcher when we do that on Panels of Pixels podcast.
Would love to.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Steve needs a co-host when I'm not around, so that'll be working. So, mine, well, I would say watched it in the 80s with Damien and his guests. So, Damien you could find with Watched It in the 80s on the Piratecore Entertainment Network. And you could also hear me on Panels the Pixels podcast, as you always do. I always, bring everything from Facebook to this particular podcast. So to promote that, so you guys know that we're covering What If. So I don't know really where this episode will lie, because we're recording this a lot earlier. So when you get there, just keep in mind that's what we're covering at the time when we're recording this particular episode. So, but listen to me on Panels to Pixels podcast. Check out Watched It in the 80s with Damien, and his coverage of any movies, shows, or anything that's going on with that within Watched It in the 80s podcast on the Piratecore Entertainment Network. Well, to submit your feedback, theories, or anything that you want, you could go to our Facebook group, which would be facebook.com/Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. And you could just comment below in anything that we post or what we're covering, or you could just even message us through that particular medium as well. You could also send us an email at adrenalincinemapodcast@gmail.com. And with that, you could send a basic text. And with that, you just write out your thoughts. We could read them. If you feel the need to record yourself, you could do that with your phone or your computer, and then just send that as an attachment, and we'll play it as usual. So that's our show of this evening. I just want to thank everybody for listening. I'm Mark.
I'm Lara.
And this was Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, and we'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.
Bye.
You shut up and count!
1, 2, 3, 4.